and welcome everybody. This is beautiful Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you being here with us, and we're excited to have Julia on with us today as our special guest. So I'm going to honor everybody's time, and let's jump into this and talk about dye sublimation, continuous dye sublimation. So let me get going here. I'm going to give a nice overview of what continuous dye sublimation webinar is going to look like today. We're going to do a quick explanation of what dye sublimation printing is exactly, production workflow for on a continuous level. We're going to get into some cut sew production, and that's going to be for most, whether you're doing personalized prints or if you're working with custom fabrics or wanting to make custom fabrics. Going to show some equipment that you would be working with, both printers and the heat source that we would recommend going with this type of production. And then we're going to highlight some solution and resources beyond the equipment, and that's why Julia's with us today. So excited for what she's got to show you guys. We're going to bring Matthew back on. He's got some fun announcements. And at the end, we're going to answer any questions that you guys have. So Matt Kastner, who is our lead wide format technician here at Coastal, he's on the webinar. So any questions that you have throughout, feel free to type them in, and Matt will answer those throughout the webinar. And then at the end, we're just going to open it up and have an open forum for any questions that were not answered throughout the webinar. With dye sublimation printing, it starts off where you're bringing your design into your computer. Now, whether you're wanting to just take a photo or do your own artwork using CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator, there's a lot of different other formats as well that you can work with. But you're basically going to be bringing an image onto your computer and then printing it off. So what the platform we're looking at today is more of a wide format platform. So I'm going to highlight that we're going to be using Wasatch. Now, Wasatch is a program that your artwork will go through. So Wasatch is not a design program. It's actually the platform. It's a RIP that takes the information and allows you to lay out your images and how you'll print them. So in this scenario, I've got a nice picture of a beach, and I'm printing multiple images of this beach scene, and then I'm going to be sending it to a printer. And this is a dye sublimation printer, and we're going to print out these examples of the beach scene. So from that, it's going on to a transfer paper. So my next example here shows that make sure it's moving over. My next example here is it's on the transfer paper. Now this transfer paper in this scenario, it's a 44-inch wide transfer paper, and I can just continuously print images over and over again if that's what I wanted to do. So from there, we talk about a heat source, and what this means is the image is actually printed onto the transfer paper, and then we're going to be talking about polyester fabric today. All my scenarios, everything that you're going to see today, it's all a polyester fabric. And as you apply the heat with a heat press or any other type of heat source, the ink will heat up, turn into a gas, and actually dye the polyester fabric. So now the ink has left the transfer paper and dyed the fabric. Here's another example is the blank substrate. So we have a blank mouse pad. We have the printout that I was showing earlier. And after we're all said and done, the finished product, the transfer, the inks left the paper, and now we have a finished product of a mouse pad. So that's a pretty basic overview of what dye sublimation printing is. We will again focus more on fabric today. There are hard surface items that you can do. On Thursday, we're actually going to be hosting another webinar called Dye Sublimation Drinkware Production. So I'm going to have a pretty broad explanation or detailed explanation of how to do drinkware mug production on Thursday if you would like to join that one. So I want to get into more on that continuous dye sublimation printing. There are numerous ways to do dye sublimation printing on the cut and sew method, whether you're going to work with an item that's pre-cut or pre-sewn. We have a lot of blanks available at Coastal to be able to do this, whether it's mouse pads or beach blankets. Either way, we're going to be able to show you how to do this on a more continuous level, more of a quicker, faster production flow versus just printing one item at a time and pressing one item at a time. So we're going to keep scaling it up throughout today's webinar. So, oh, here's another example of the mugs. So, or not the mugs, the mouse pad. Some other examples to get in more into the cut and sew, and we're going to be highlighting these patterns later on with Julia, but you'll be able to print out the panels. So if you're looking into doing cut sew production, you'll actually be able to print out the onto the transfer paper the patterns that you will be wanting to press onto the fabric later. So in this one, we are doing it's called a double front ladies dress, and you'll be able to print and then transfer the fabric onto fabric rolls, or you'll be able to print and transfer onto pre-cut fabric parts. And what I mean about that is, say if you're in production on a high scale, you could have all of these pattern pieces pre-cut out as individual white pieces. And so you would have a full set of, like, say maybe ladies small, ladies medium, and ladies large, and they're all printed just cut out with white fabric pieces. And then you can print your design onto those fabric pieces at a later time. I'll show you how this is done. Just hang with me. It might be confusing at this point, but we'll get there and we'll explain that in more detail. Another example are customers who are wanting to do personalized cut and sew. So we're seeing a lot of this in today's sports where people are now wearing sublimated jerseys. And this is how this method is done. Again, you'll print out the patterns, and with the Wasatch software, there's another component in there called variable data printing, where you can have one design and bring that into Wasatch, and then you can bring in the information such as the player's name and number, and it can drop that information in there and then pre-fill as you're printing. So you don't have to, if it's a baseball team, there's 15 players on there, you don't have to actually design 15 different images. You can do one image and then bring in the players' names and numbers into the variable data printing option into Wasatch, and that will fill that information in for you. So you're only bringing in one design. So we're going to move over from actually printing pattern pieces to just printing a pattern. Another unique feature in the Wasatch RIP program that we offer brings another tool where you can come up with just one image, one step and repeat image. So notice how the corners here have the red flower. You can design a step and repeat pattern, bring it into Wasatch, and with a few easy clicks, now you have a repeat pattern over and over again. So now this is how those corners matched up to be able to make those flowers. A lot of unique methods here of doing printing, whether it is, again, printing onto an item that's already made, like mouse pads or beach towels, or, and those are just a few examples. It could be a unique item to yourself, whether you're wanting to print out patterns to make apparel, custom patterns, sportswear market, or if you're looking at doing like step and repeat patterns to make your own bolts of fabric. So um, these are just some really good examples of that continuous sublimation printing. And I've done quite a bit of talking already, so we're going to get to one of those components of the webinars where I'm curious to get some feedback from you guys again. So let me get another poll question going. We've highlighted a few different production methods here for you guys. And I'm curious which type of these methods interest you the most. So I'm going to distribute that poll out. If you were going to do this type of production, offering, which one would you guys be most interested in doing? So, and we're going to give a nice broad overview of equipment here next that would be the right type of equipment to work with, but we're going to be a little broad. I definitely recommend, if this is what you're looking into doing, give us a call. We've got myself and Rich Foltz and Paul here at Coastal, that we can work with you one-on-one to hone in the right type of equipment for you. So where we're going to next, it's just going to be a nice overview of what's out there and available. So almost done here. Let me close this out and show you all. I'll share this with you. So I should be, yep, you should be seeing it now. So it looks like a lot of you are thinking about working with something that's already pre-made. And I just did some examples like a mouse pad or beach towel or something like that that's already pre-made. Printing your own patterns looks like some of you are interested in more of that personalized. Those special unique items, we've got a lot of customers out there that we are working with that have their own unique niche item. And if you've got something in mind, we can work through that with you as well. So custom made fabrics, awesome. So a nice variety here. Let me hide this. All right, so now we've kind of highlighted what we can make, so let's find out how do we make it. So I'm going to jump into the equipment here. So this would be a 44-inch dye sublimation printer. There's a couple of different options out in the market for 44-inch. And then our other option would be a 64-inch dye sublimation printer. When you get into the 64-inch range, there's a lot of options available, whether you want to work with a standard CMYK printer. The one we're featuring here, this is the new Epson printer, the 9470, and it's a dual print head printer. So when you hear dual print head printer, you're going to typically have an 8-color, although it's CMYK ×2, you're going to get a much faster production. And then Epson has now come out with another option, and it offers CMYK and fluorescent inks. So you would have CMYK, and then on this side you would have, I believe it's black and cyan, and then it would be fluorescent magenta and fluorescent yellow. So it's an option to be able to print a wide variety of colors there. So that's now available here at Epson. But again, a lot of choices when it comes to a 64-inch printer, whether you want single color, one print head, or multiple colors, 2 print heads. So we can get into that in more detail, but just good to know. I'm going to jump back over to the 44-inch printer. This is a 6370, and we are showcasing the production edition that has a take-up system. Now, I'm going to highlight this take-up system a little bit. What's going on here, and this one has it as well. This is the take-up system. Actually, it's down here. I just don't have a core on it right now. But what's happening with the take-up system is your images go through the printer and comes out, and as the paper goes down, the take-up system rolls it back up. And keep that in mind as I talk about the core that will have a print on it. Now I'm going to highlight that. We're going to build on this, but typically when you're doing continuous dye sublimation printing, you're working with a printer with a take-up system. And that is optional. So with this printer, you can purchase this, the 6370 with or without the take-up system. So those are the printers. Now we're going to switch over to the heat source. And I'm sure a lot of you, since you're already in the industry, I'm assuming most of you have a heat press at home or in your office, I should say. It's very common to have a smaller heat press, maybe a 16 by 20 heat press in the office. I'm showcasing a larger heat press here. This would be a 44 by 64 inch heat press. Now there's a lot of options when it comes to a flatbed heat press out there. We have heat presses that have heat on the top and the bottom. So if you're pressing, let's say, like a blanket and you wanted to sublimate the bottom and the top at the same time, there's heat presses that allow you to be able to do that. When you get into the wider format heat presses, there are different sizes from 20 by 25, 32 by 44 on up. So it's very a lot of options, and that's where call in and talk to us at Coastal. We can find out what it is that you're making, so we get the right heat press for your production needs. I would definitely go with a nice USA made heat press. There's actually 3 different manufacturers that I'm aware of here in the US that make good quality wide format heat presses. So again, another conversation that we can have more with you if this is the way you're thinking about going. Another option would be a rotary heat press. This might be the first time some of you are seeing a rotary heat press, so I'm going to really dive into what a rotary heat press is. But this would be where you're wanting to do like a true continuous production. So, and again, we're going to get into this a little bit more, and I've got a few slides that's going to really explain what a rotary heat press is. So I'm going to show you some moving parts here. There's some components. I'm going to highlight. This is where, well, let me just hit play and I'll show it to you. These are some of the moving components of the heat press, where you've got the paper going up and through the rotary press, as well as fabric that will go up and in through. This is the table. What's going on right here, I don't have this as a moving part, but this is actually a belt that's moving as well, and it's going around this drum. This drum is heated with either electrical or oil, and we'll highlight the difference between an electrical and an oil heated rotary press. This would be tissue paper that's on this, and it's used to protect. The tissue paper goes around the drum as well as between the drum and the belt to keep all the ink from getting onto the belt. And then this is the drum that's heated up. So this would be equivalent to your heat press. This is where the transfer would go around the drum, and the transfer is heated, and then the fabric's going in as well around the drum, and this is where the sublimation process is happening, and then it's coming out and sliding down and being taken up. So I'm going to show you a few examples here of how and when you would use a rotary heat press. So earlier I showed the step and repeat patterns where you were taking a design and you were repeating it over and over again. So let's say you go to a fabric store and you go buy, some polyester material and it has a repeat pattern over and over again. Like maybe it's a chevron pattern or maybe it's a camouflage pattern, whatever. And they're doing, and it's on a polyester material. So this is how you would do um, what we call roll to roll production. So on this right here, this is where you would put your roll of white fabric. Your roll of white fabric would come up, go across the table between the belt and the heat drum, the heated drum, and come out and roll back up. So at the end, the fabric will be rolled back up onto a core. This is the printed paper, the transfer paper. So remember when I was talking earlier about the printer and the paper is coming off the printer and being taken back up onto another core with the take-up system? This is where the printed transfer paper would be. And this is where the paper will be when we're done. So let me show you this. The transfer paper is coming up. It's going over the table as well, around the drum and back out, and now it's being rolled up. So this is throwaway. This is when you're done, all the ink is off of the paper and rolled back up onto here. I mentioned that we have tissue paper. So the tissue paper comes off, and again, it just protects everything. So we don't want to get any ink on the belt, and it's rolled back up afterwards. And then again, this is the heat source. That's all the transfers happening. So that's how you would do roll to roll production. Another option, if you're not wanting to do roll to roll production and you have cut parts. So some of you mentioned that you wanted to do mouse pads or beach towels or something, some other item that's already, made. It could be a flag. There's a wide variety, bandanas, just, any type of clothing there, a shawl. So this is what you would utilize if you're already working with a part that's a finished blank or pre-cut out piece of fabric. With option 2, you would take pre-cut fabric pieces. And because of that, we're not going to use these two components. So we're actually going to turn, not use this bar or this take-up system. We will still have the transfer paper here that you had printed off, and it'll still go up and across the table and around the drum. And you'll still use the tissue paper because you don't want anything to get onto your drum and you want to protect everything. But what's going to happen here, oh, and here's your heat drum. It's nice and hot, 375 to 400 degrees, depending on the type of material you're working with. But what you're going to actually do, oh, I missed something here. You're actually going to take there's going to be a piece of fabric. So let's just, for simplicity, let's say it's a mouse pad. You'll actually, as the transfer paper is coming up and going over and feeding into the drum, and this is just going to be a continuous thing. So as it's going up and over, you'll take your piece of fabric and lay it on top of the paper. And as the paper's moving in, it now becomes like a conveyor. It's just going to bring in the mouse pad with you or with the transfer paper and go around and come out. And then it'll just drop out here at the bottom. So that's how you would do just continuous. The mouse pads earlier, I was showing that it was printed out like 4 at a time. So a person can be standing in front of the rotary press and just laying down the mouse pads, and it just feeds into it. And you'll be able to, knock out tons of mouse pads or whatever it is that you're wanting to make through this process. So here are the custom printed finished blanks. So again, I always go back to mouse pads. It's just easier. Beach towels. This is by no means the minimum of it. You could do floor mats, gaming mats. We're seeing a lot of those. The gaiters. The face protection gaiters right now are obviously in high demand. So I've seen neckties. We didn't really highlight it, but this is how the lanyards are made. Like when you go to a trade show and you have a lanyard around your or dog leashes, pet leashes, take your pet for a walk. There are some custom made rotary presses that allow narrow webbing. So if you're needing to make anything like a ribbon, we could help you out with that. So a wide variety, and that's where I said we can work with you on any custom item that you're wanting to make. So those are some finished blanks. And then here is where we're showing some of those custom printed fabrics doing that step and repeat. So fun stuff there. Now, when it comes to cut and sew, there are a few more steps to taking your design from the printer, to final production. And that would be the actually cutting it out and sewing it. So if you are looking at doing these types of jerseys, or any type of sportswear custom apparel, you would do the cut and sew. So you're printing it and then you're pressing it onto the fabric. So you would either have to cut out your prints eventually. So you can do the standard scissors. There are electrical fabric scissors available. And then to truly get into a more high production shop, we do see people adding another element, and that would be a laser fabric cutter. So this would be where it's actually scanning and then cutting out the patterns on the go. So again, once it came off the rotary press, this is now the fabric that's been sublimated, going through the fabric cutter, the laser fabric cutter. Now, we've talked a lot about apparel, but it's not just the apparel industry. This is how a lot of soft signage and banners are made. You would print it and then cut and sew the banners and the different types of signage that you see in a lot of the trade shows, airports throughout the US and other venues. And then we have flags. So this would be pretty easy. You're printing it and then you're sewing one seam and putting it onto a pole. So whether it's for any sporting events, you could easily make signage and flags there. And to do this, the main components obviously would be the dye-sublimation inks, transfer paper. When it comes to transfer paper, there's a wide variety of transfer papers to work with when we're getting into wide format and the type of material you're working with. There's adhesive paper, and there's different levels of the adhesiveness on the paper, whether you're working with fabric that has microfiber or not. And there's just questions that we'll want to talk with you about to figure out, make the right recommendation of transfer paper. This is the tissue paper that goes on the rotary press. And then if you're working with the rotary press option, you definitely will have to have your fair share of 3-inch cores. So that's a kind of a nice overview of continuous dye sublimation printing and the equipment and the supplies. So I'm sure you're kind of thinking, yeah, I want to do this, but where do I get the patterns? Where do I get the fabric from? And we're not going to leave you hanging. So this is where I'm going to hand it over to Julia, and I might have her muted. So hang with me here and let me take her off mute. Julia, are you
Wonderful.
there?
I am.
Yay.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you
You're,
very much. Lovely to
you're,
meet everyone.
yeah, you're still awake too.
Yes.
I,
It
good.
is 2:30 in the morning in Australia, but we're doing fine.
Yes. Well, I'm glad. Thank you for waking up and joining us today. I've told a
My
few
pleasure.
people about you already, and they're very excited. So hopefully
Fantastic.
they're on the webinar and listening. So
Mhm.
I'm just going to hand it over to you. I will move the screen for you. So you just tell me
Okay.
whenever you're
Wonderful.
ready for the next slide.
Okay, wonderful. Lovely to meet everybody. As Darcy mentioned, we are online from Melbourne in Australia. We met Darcy at the recent NBM show, the one day that happened in Texas, Irvine, Texas. We were over in America to introduce Pattern Room. So due to the current climate, we've just come online today. So happy to be here. So we might just go to the next slide.
Very good.
So Pattern Room is a brand new world first website of online industry ready patterns in DXF and AI for Illustrator format. It was created a long time ago. We have another business that does direct to designer individual development, but this was created as a pattern catalogue. We currently have over 149,000 designs to choose from, and primarily in the basics of t-shirts and singlets, jumpers and jackets, tracksuit pants and leggings, focusing mainly on the sportswear industry because that's where sublimation printing is widely used, but they can also be used for basic clothing as well, for promotional clothing and the likes. There's a huge variety of fits. So we've really broken down what the world of garments look like in a way that's quite unusual. So we provide pattern fits from a compression fit, very, very tight, through to a tight and slim fit, a regular basic fit, and then all the way through to an oversized fit. So of a t-shirt, would you believe there are over 4,000 versions of a t-shirt for menswear? So it's a lot to choose from. We have garments ranging from babies triple or quadruple zero, 40, right the way through to men's 8 extra large and a women's 28, which is like similar to a women's 26 in the US. So that's a very large variety. You can choose to order one size or you can choose the whole set. And they've all been developed in Australia, so they are to the Western fit. If any of you have produced garments offshore in any of the Asian countries, you may find that the patterns don't quite fit, the sizing's a little bit off, it may be smaller than you're expecting. So the beauty of having garments made by a pattern maker in the Western world is that they have an idea of what the body shape looks like for that Western body type. Yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, Darcy.
Sure.
Okay, great. So the reason why we developed Pattern Room, to develop a pattern individually with a pattern maker, if you can find one, we're quite a rare breed these days. It's a very expensive process and quite labor intensive. You know, I'm not sure if anybody has gone down the road of doing this, but you'll often have to go and find a pattern maker to start with. They may be a manual pattern maker. You have to take your idea or a garment to them. They'll make a pattern. You have a sample made, you'll tweak that and change it to fit, go back again, back and forth. And this process can take months sometimes. Then you need to grade it into different sizes and then have that digitized in so that you can actually use it within your computer pattern making system. So I think that within our sample room business, I've developed over 7,000 designs, and I've been in the fashion industry for 25 years now. So there are a lot more patterns that have been made. And so we wanted to reduce this development time. And so we have pre-fitted, tweaked, changed, used all of our design knowledge on the patterns to produce, you know, a great looking mid-crew neckline, a fantastic raglan sleeve, These are probably words that you may not know, but we've got a way of explaining that on our website. So we've really improved poorly fitting garments. That's probably my main aim in life, is to reduce landfill in the world by reducing badly fitting garments in the world. So that's one of our core reasons for being. So the patterns that you're buying through Pattern Room have been fitted to professional fit models using industry standard fitting, so that what you can guarantee is the garment will actually fit the way you have seen it and the way that you're expecting when you buy that. We also have consistency over the fit library. What I mean by that is, of our different body shapes, if you were looking, for example, at a men's regular fit t-shirt, and you were to buy a raglan sleeve polo short sleeve today, if you were to come back in a year's time and say, well, I really like the fit of that, but I want a singlet, a muscle singlet, then you could purchase that one and you know that it fits the same in the body. We find this is a really important aspect, because we want you to invest in your pattern library and over time build that pattern library so that you have a fantastic catalogue of patterns to offer your clients. So it's no longer being reactive to customers and only producing what they want to. The reason why we concentrate on the sportswear industry is I have had many custom sportswear businesses call me, and they often say, Julia, I have a business, I have 2,000 patterns and nothing works and nothing fits together. And I really need to overhaul my whole website, which we know is a very big investment. So we like to turn the tables and help our clients build a pattern library that you can approach your customers and say, well, this is our slim fit range that you can choose from, or our regular fit range, and you can build on that over time. You can really expand the offering to your customers. We've had many people say to us when they first find out about Pattern Room that they have turned many customers away purely because they didn't have the pattern for what the customer was looking for. So you may have a set-in hooded jumper, but you don't have a raglan mock collar zip front jacket. And so therefore you couldn't produce that garment for the customer. But this way, when a customer walks through your door and asks you the question, you can jump on Pattern Room and see if that pattern is available. You could take the order, then place the order for the pattern when you have received the deposit, and then you can buy that pattern and it's available in 48 hours to you. So it's definitely doable for you to complete that order. So it really allows you to invest once you have a secured order, which we really love being able to offer to our customers. Bringing manufacturing back under control is really important. If you can take on the control of what you produce rather than being of your range being dictated by what's available in the blanks market, then we think that that's a great way to differentiate your business and offer a wide range of products to your customer. So that you can improve the quality and reduce the turnaround time for your customers, which is what everybody loves to do. Next slide, Darci, if that's okay.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, wonderful. So as we mentioned before, to organize your pattern library, we'd love to help you do that. Some people have those patterns and they just don't know. They have a lot of patterns that don't work. So some people purchase a pattern library when they purchase a business, and then they realize that the patterns are maybe 10, 15 years old. You've had some machinists who have thankfully managed to make things fit for you, but we'd like to make sure that your patterns are actually fantastic patterns that anyone can sew. There might be some gaps in your offering. It may be that you produce basketball uniforms, but you haven't ever looked into swimwear, and you realize that there's a gap in the market, a seasonal gap. So you may be very busy for summer sports, but it may be that winter sports you're lacking, so you can expand your offering. So you've got an all year round business, which we would love to show you. There are a lot of sports that we're preparing for to come online soon. This library is expanding every day. We are soon to be uploading team swimwear, which we're really excited about. And we want to help people at the moment. We're all in this together around the world with this terrible crisis we're under. And we'd love to help people prepare so that when life returns to normal, that you're ready and raring to go with a whole new business offering. So we've got a flyer, which I believe Darci is going to send out to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a flyer about our business. And it's also the offer, there's a free pattern download. There's actually a pattern in every size category. You can download this as an AI file or a DXF. So if you are a Corel user, then you can download the DXF to import into your system. So yeah, it's really for you to test the patterns in your system, see what they look like, so you can maybe use them, see how you can drop images in or customization. And we also have a number of videos on YouTube on how to use the website. So we really look forward to helping you expand your pattern library. We're really excited to be able to introduce this to you today. I'm sorry if I spoke very quickly and my accent's a little hard to understand.
No, I thought it was great. So
Fantastic, thank you.
now another source of we'd like to let you guys know about, and this is just really a list of US companies that I'm aware of that you can reach out to for your fabric needs. So Coastal has a few that we can work with you on, but here's kind of just notes of fabric companies within the US that I would recommend writing down their information, and depending whatever it is that you're wanting to make, if it is in that more of the jerseys and the sports uniforms, these are good sources to go to get that fabric from here in the US, and some information. So we've kind of done a full circle here of where, now we have the solution for the patterns. You would do your designing, bring those patterns into whether it's Adobe Illustrator, CorelDRAW, whichever program, whatnot that you're working with, and, lay out your design inside those patterns. We'll print them off using one of our solutions of Dye-Sublimation printers, and then the Rotary press to get the final product. And that is how you do apparel or any other type of production for continuous Dye-Sublimation printing. All right, looks like we've come to a stop here on questions. If
Yeah.
any other questions come up, though, feel free to reach out to either of us, myself, or Matt, or Julia. We're here
Absolutely.
to, yeah, we're here to help and to be a valuable, a resource to you guys. And look forward to working with you.
Wonderful, Darci. Thank you very much for the time, and more than happy to answer any questions anybody has through the chat or through my email. So thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce Pattern Room.
Yes, thanks. Everybody have a great Tuesday and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.